Hey, this is part 5, and I know it's been a little bit, but I have been so sick. First of all, did y'all notice how much my hair grew in a week from my party last Saturday when I did my live to now on Sunday? Yes, it's a wig. My hair is at a weird stage right now, how it's growing out, and I'm not a fan of it. And so I dug out my old wig from 23 years ago, and this is what I wore to church today. And so I thought I would let you guys see it. It's as close to my haircut as I've been able to find. So anyway, it is just cute and easy, and so that's what I did. But I have been really sick this week, and it takes me longer to get over an illness than it takes normal people. So I've not been able to record anything, but I am finally feeling better, and so this is part 5. So I've had some people ask me, people texting me saying, hey, where's part 5? I can't wait to see what happens. And I kind of feel like that I'm leaving y'all with cliffhangers. I don't mean to, but anyway, so let me get started on where we left off. So I had found out I had breast cancer, and I was very fortunate because once you find out, that is just the beginning. You have tons of things to do. And one of the things is you have to find an oncologist. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that you find an oncologist that you truly feel like you have some faith in and that you genuinely like, because this person, they're more than just your doctor. This person, I mean, they're truly fighting for your life, and you need to find somebody that you have complete trust in and somebody that you genuinely like. And I was very fortunate because my sister-in-law had had breast cancer. She already had who I consider to be the best breast cancer doctor in the world. He used to be, I think he was the director at MD Anderson's breast cancer clinic. And if you know anything about cancer hospitals, MD Anderson and Sloan Kettering in New York and MD Anderson in Houston, they go back and forth for first and second place every year for the best cancer hospital in the country. And Dr. Blumenshine was my oncologist. He actually left MD Anderson and came to Arlington, which at the time was about 20 minutes from where I lived, and opened up a private cancer clinic. And he treated breast cancer patients. And people flew in from all over the world. I met people from Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, from all over the States when I was in his waiting room. So I was fortunate that I already had that connection. So we had to call and make the appointment. And also the start of that is a lot of times you'll meet with an oncologist first and they'll order all the tests, but he does it different. At least he did at the time. He had, once they knew you had cancer, you would do all the tests, then you would go in and meet with him. And so you also have to start figuring out your insurance. And at the time, it was a little different. This is 23 years ago, but we struggled with my insurance, and it was a struggle. Fortunately, Don took care of most of that, but I remember him one day on the phone. I could hear the frustration in his voice, and I remember him telling the person on the phone, I truly hope that your wife never gets cancer and that you have to deal with somebody like you telling us that we can't get something approved or that you have to wait on a test because insurance won't approve it. He said it in a not quite so nice way, but at the end, we ended up getting everything approved, but I had to have what's called a MUGA scan, which is to check your heart to see if your heart is strong enough to do all the chemotherapy. I had to have a CAT scan, a PET scan. You have to have blood work. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was going to also have to have a bone marrow biopsy, which is it's a whole story in itself. That was quite the experience. But so I was able to get those tests done pretty quick, and thank goodness. And then we went in to meet with Dr. Blumenshine. I'm going to call him Dr. B from now on because that's a mouthful, but I already knew him and I genuinely liked him. I'm so sorry for the way I sound. I'm still kind of stopped up from being sick, but I genuinely like Dr. B. I had failed to mention something to Dawn. So I had been taking Julie into these appointments all this time. So I knew him. I knew all of his nurses. I knew that Dr. B had Parkinson's disease, and it had not affected his brain at all. He was still incredibly smart, and who I consider to be the best oncologist for breast cancer there was. But he was pretty shaky, and I had failed to mention to Don that he had Parkinson's. So when we went in that day, you always waited when you saw him. I remember waiting as long as 4 hours one time to see him. It never bothered me. I say that because Dr. B always took time with you. He never made you feel rushed. If you had a question, he would answer it. And he just never made you feel like he had to hurry and get to the next patient. When you're talking to a doctor about this, you're scared, and you want to know all the information they know, and you have lots of questions. And I remember going in there and waiting, and I remember Don saying, oh my gosh, how much longer? And I told him, I said, we don't know how many people he met today that are brand new cancer diagnosis, and they have a million questions like we do. You don't know who just got their scan results back today that their cancer's back. So I never ever, he tried to see as many people as he could, and I would wait as patiently as I needed to in his waiting room. I met lots of great people in that waiting room. So we went in, and Dr. B came in, and he was a little unsteady that day. And the metal tray that's in the room, his foot shot out and he kicked it. And I remember he knocked something over with his hands, and his hands were kind of shaky. And to me, it was just normal. And so he had to leave the room for a minute to go get a file. And when he did, I looked at Dawn, and Dawn is like, we need to get out of here. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, Tracey, I think he's been drinking. I said, Dawn, he's got Parkinson's. And he said, well, it would have been nice if you had told me that. I had just forgotten to tell him. I'd never mentioned it to him. So it was pretty funny. But anyway, Dr. B wrote on whatever happened to be there. You know, the paper that they put over the tables in the doctor's room? He would write all over that. He'd write statistics, and he'd draw pictures. And at one point he said, come in my office. And we go in his office, and he's drawing on his whiteboard. And he had all the results of my test. And this was before my chart and before navigating care. So you couldn't get your results. You had to wait till you saw the doctor. And I didn't know what those results were going to say. We had no idea. But he told us, he said, this is not the best news. He said, because of the size, you have it in both breasts, it's invasive, and on both sides, meaning it's already broken out of the, I guess cancer has a capsule that it's in, or I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but it had already broken out of that. And he said, we don't know yet if there's lymph node involvement, but he did do an exam, and he had me lift my arms. And as he was feeling under my arms, I jumped, and he said, it feels like we have lymph node involvement as well, which you never want to hear. He said, yours is very aggressive, and it's a grade 3. And he said, we're going to need to find out if you're HER2 positive. At the time, you did not want to be HER2 positive. That meant it was even more aggressive, and they didn't have drugs for it. And he said, you have to find out if you're ER/PR positive, you're ER positive, PR negative, you're triple negative. You have to find out all these things. And I wanted to know all of it. Some people don't want to know that. I want to know every single thing. He said, we are going to put you right now at stage 3, and stage 4 is as bad as it gets, and that means when it's spread to a distant organ. And he said, we don't want it to be in any lymph nodes, but if it's in 1 or 2, that's not as bad. If it's in more than 3, then it's an even bigger hill to climb. He told me, he said, I do a very aggressive regimen. And Don asked me if I remembered this just not too long ago. He said, do you remember what he said to you? He said, I will take you to the edge of death to save your life. And at the time, I remember hearing that, but I don't remember really thinking much about it. I will tell you, by the time I finished chemotherapy, I felt pretty close to death. And that's not an exaggeration. I remember my mom saying to somebody, I can hear her saying, they're going to kill my daughter. And it was rough. But he told us, he said, we do not see that it has spread to any other organs. That is the best news. We just have to find out if it has spread to your lymph nodes. He also said we're going to need a bone marrow biopsy. And I knew what that was. I knew they didn't put you to sleep for it. And I was not looking forward to that. So he told me, guess what? It'll be in a week. Everything's a week. Everything is, you get to wait a week for it. So I'd had all the tests, and he said, I need to get you into a surgeon. He said, I believe the only option that you have is a radical double mastectomy. You take everything. We do not have time for you to consult with a plastic surgeon and do all your reconstruction now. I believe that they believed it was going to come back on my chest wall, and they didn't want anything to hinder that. And so that wasn't an option for me. He told me, I want you to meet with this surgeon. And he said, he's who I use. He's the best. And I will say he did an incredible job. But Dawn and I went for the bone marrow biopsy. And to say that I was nervous was an understatement. I knew it was going to hurt. And I just, you don't really know what to, I knew kind of what to expect, but it's not fun. And so they let Don come in with me. They call it the bone marrow biopsy room. They let him come in with me. And you lay on a table and you're on your stomach, and they tell Don you can sit at the table at the end by her head, and you can hold her hands, and they are back at your hip. And I told Don, I said, do not look, because Don does not like needles. He really doesn't like to watch needles go into his wife. And one time they were doing a carbon monoxide test on me, and they were doing it at my foot, right here. And I look over, they're putting the needle in me, and I look over, and the nurse is like, sir, are you okay? He was white as a sheet. He was about to pass out. So I said, please don't look, Dawn. And so they deaden the hip, but they can't deaden the bone. And they are drilling into your hip bone to get marrow out. But they can't deaden that. And there's not words for that. I was crying, and I just kept thinking I could do anything for a few minutes. I can do anything for a few minutes. And Don was praying for me. I can remember hearing him just say, God, please, please let her get through this. And so at one point I heard him kind of gasp, and that was later on. I thought I remembered hearing him do that. And he told me later, glad he didn't tell me at the time, but he told me later, he said, Tracey, it looked like he had a corkscrew and was opening a bottle of wine in your hip. I didn't need that image in my head. I'm glad he didn't tell me while I was laying on that table, but that's what they do. They screw this into your hip and they pull that out. I think you should be asleep. I don't think that they should make you do that when you're awake. They put little kids to sleep. I think they should put adults to sleep. That's my 2 cents on that, but they don't. I don't know if they do now, but they didn't then, and it's cruel. It's not fun. But after that, they have you turn over and lay on your back for 10 to 15 minutes and to stop the bleeding, to put pressure on it, and then you're free to go. So he leaves the room. I'm on my back. I'm watching the clock. I'm crying. I'm traumatized. And the time is up to get up. Now, I've had back surgery. I had back surgery when I was very young. I was only 19. And I've had back surgery. And so it's hard for me to sit straight up. I need to turn on my side, but that was not something I could do. And Don didn't want to pull on me and hurt me. And my husband is very techie. I trust him with anything technical, anything mechanical. He can fix anything. He looks down and he goes, hey, this is an automatic bed. He said, I'll figure out how to just raise your head up and then you can get off. I was like, okay. So I'm laying there. Well, I guess he hit the wrong button with his foot. They're all controlled by your feet because he hits a button. And so I'm laying like this. Here's my head. Here's my feet. I'm laying flat. The next thing I know, my head is upside down. I'm staring at the wall behind me. My feet are in the air. And he's going, oh my gosh, you're upside down. He had hit the wrong button and he couldn't get me back up. So I have been crying. My eyes are swollen. Oh, so sorry. My eyes are all swollen. I've been crying. Now I'm laughing hysterically. I'm looking at the wall behind me. He is frantic trying to find the right button to set me up. He can't. Basically, I end up rolling off this table and he's trying to help me. And I get up and we go walking out of the biopsy room, the bone marrow biopsy room. And I am laughing, but tears are still coming down my face. He's laughing. He's holding me up. And to this day, we know the nurses went in there, saw the bed at this weird angle, had seen us come out laughing, and still to this day think, what were they doing in that bone marrow biopsy room? So that was my bone marrow biopsy story. Thankfully, the test results came back and it was negative. So I meet with my surgeon. He tells me, you could have lumpectomies. It's totally up to you. We feel like the best thing is a mastectomy, but you could have a lumpectomy. I did go home to think about it. And now I think back and wonder what was I thinking about? Of course I was going to have a double mastectomy. Why would you want to sit around and worry about the rest of your breast tissue having breast cancer in it? I'm not sure why. Maybe it was because at the time I'd never had cancer and I was 35, and now I don't care. I'm like, whatever. Of course I would have done a double mastectomy. I do remember coming home and thinking a lot about, what should I do? Dr. Blumenshine apparently got wind that my surgeon had mentioned lumpectomy to me, and he called me and he said, your only option if you want to live is to double mastectomy. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm doing. And so we scheduled it and this was on a Friday, and he said, we are scheduling it for Tuesday. I mean, we have got to get this out. It is growing quickly. And if we're going to save your life, we've got to get in there and get this done. And so my surgery was scheduled for Tuesday, and I will catch you up on part 6 of what happened in the pre-op room, because if I'm involved and there's some pre-drugs happening, there was something funny that was going to happen, and I did not disappoint. So make good choices, and I will get part 6 done soon. See y'all later. Y'all have a great night. Bye.